The call came on a Monday morning, the kind of Monday that looks harmless until it isn't. I was standing in my kitchen in my house shoes, wearing an old robe that still smelled faintly like lavender detergent. The kettle was starting to sing on the stove. Outside, my neighbor's sprinkler clicked back and forth like it always did. And for a second I remember thinking, good, normal, another quiet day. Then my phone rang. I almost let it go to voicemail because I don't like unknown numbers. But something in me, maybe habit, maybe that little anxiety you get as you get older, made me pick up. Good morning, may I speak with Ms. Denise Carter? This is she. This is Ashley calling from your bank. I'm reaching out because we received a request to update the beneficiary on your retirement account. I just need to confirm, did you authorize that change? I didn't answer right away. I stood there, staring at my countertop like it might give me a better response than the one forming in my mouth. My beneficiary? I finally said. No, I didn't change anything. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that tells you the person is reading something on a screen, weighing words. Okay, she said, careful and polite. I understand. The notes indicate the change was confirmed on a verification call. My stomach tightened in a way I recognized. It wasn't pain, exactly. It was that cold drop you feel when you realize you're not holding the steering wheel anymore. A verification call? I repeated. With who? I can't share all details over the phone, she said, still polite, still professional. But I can tell you the change was processed as a standard update. If you didn't authorize it, we should schedule an in-person appointment as soon as possible. I took a slow breath. The kettle kept singing behind me, loud now, like it didn't understand it was the wrong time to be making noise. Okay, I said. Yes. I'll come in. When I hung up, I turned off the stove and stood there in silence. I didn't move for a while. My kitchen clock ticked like it was trying to keep me anchored. That clock used to annoy my husband. He called it, that little judge, because it always sounded like it was counting the seconds you wasted. 6 years gone, and I still heard his voice in certain corners of the house. This house wasn't fancy. It wasn't a mansion, and it wasn't one of those spotless places you see on TV. It was a regular split level we bought when Marcus was still small enough to fall asleep in the back seat with a juice box in his hand. The carpet had been replaced twice. The fridge handle was loose if you pulled it too hard. The porch light flickered when the wind picked up. But it was mine. And the retirement account, my little nest egg, wasn't just money either. It was the thing that let me sleep at night. It was the reason I didn't have to call anybody for help. It was my quiet proof that even after my husband died, even after grief took the color out of my life for a while, I still kept going. I still handled my business. So when that woman on the phone said beneficiary, it didn't sound like paperwork. It sounded like somebody had put their hand in my purse while I was still holding it. I went into the living room and looked at the photo on my mantel. My husband in a baseball cap, smiling that tired but steady smile he always had after mowing the lawn. I touched the edge of the frame with my thumb. I told you I'd protect it, I whispered, and it made my throat sting. I didn't cry. Not yet. I cleaned my kitchen instead, because cleaning is what I do when my thoughts get loud. By the time I finished wiping the counters, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. I stared at his name on my screen. My son. 33 years old. Tall, handsome, charming when he wanted to be. The kind of man who could walk into a room and make you feel like he was truly listening, even when he wasn't. He'd been that way since he was a teenager. Sweet when he needed something, distant when he didn't. I answered. Hey mama, he said, warm and casual. You good? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was timed. Like he knew. Marcus, I said. Did you do something with my bank account? There was a beat of silence. Just long enough to be noticeable, not long enough to look guilty if he wanted to pretend it wasn't. What are you talking about? He asked. The bank called me, I said. They said my retirement beneficiary was updated. He exhaled like I was stressing him out. Oh, that. Yeah, I helped with that. My grip tightened on my phone. You helped with that? Yeah, he said, like I was asking about taking out the trash. Mama, you've been through a lot. You don't need to be juggling all that paperwork alone. Jade and I were just trying to make things easier. I felt my cheeks heat up. Part anger, part embarrassment. Marcus, you don't change something like that without telling me. It's not a big deal, he said quickly. It's just a name on a form. We're family. I hated the way he used that word like a key. Family. Like it opened every door and erased every boundary. Who did you change it to? I asked, and I already knew the answer before he said it. I could feel it in my bones. He chuckled softly. Me. Who else? I didn't speak. I could hear him smiling through the phone like he'd done something practical and smart. Marcus, I said slowly, your father and I set that account up together. I know, he said. And I'm your son. That's when I heard Jade in the background, her voice light and sweet the way it always was when she wanted to sound harmless. Babe, she called out. Tell her it's for her own good. She gets overwhelmed. My stomach turned. Jade always spoke like she was hosting a brunch. Always calm. Always soft. She never raised her voice, not even when she was cutting you down. She'd been in my life 3 years now, and I'd spent most of that time trying to convince myself I was lucky. Lucky my son married a woman who smiled, who hugged, who called me Ms. Denise with respect. But now I heard it. The little edge under the sugar. Put me on speaker, Jade said, still in the background. Marcus didn't, but he must have moved the phone because suddenly her voice was clearer. Ms. Denise, she said. I don't want you to feel attacked. We just worry about you. Stress isn't good at your age. At your age. I'm 58. I'm not a child. I'm not helpless. I drive myself. I pay my bills. I shovel my own walkway in winter when I have to, even if my back complains the next day. But I didn't snap at her. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction. I didn't want to sound emotional. That's how people start writing stories about you. I'm not overwhelmed, I said, calm as I could manage. And I'm not confused. Change it back. Marcus sighed. Why are you making this a thing? I didn't make it a thing, I said. You did. Without my permission. He went quiet for a second, then his voice shifted, still controlled, but colder. Mama, you've been forgetful lately. I felt something in me pull tight, like a thread about to snap. Forgetful. You know, he continued, like he was trying to be gentle. Ever since Dad passed, you've had these moments. It's normal. We're just trying to protect you. Protect you. That word again. Like I was a possession. I swallowed, not because I was hurt, though I was, but because I could feel my voice rising, and I refused to let him paint me as unstable. Marcus, I said, you don't protect me by taking control. It's not control, he said. It's support. Jade's voice floated in again, soft as a pillow. We love you. We're not your enemies. I didn't respond. My eyes drifted over my living room, the worn sofa, the throw blanket my sister crocheted, the little scuff on the wall where Marcus once kicked a soccer ball indoors when I told him not to. All these years of being the one who held the line. And now my own son was telling me I couldn't be trusted with my own name. I have an appointment at the bank, I said. I'll handle it. Marcus's tone brightened too fast, like a switch flipped. Okay. Do what you gotta do. Just, don't let them confuse you with all that talk. We can come with you. No, I said. I'm going alone. There was another pause. Why? Because I didn't want you in the room when I asked questions, I thought. Because I didn't want them to look at you and assume you were the responsible one. I'm going alone, I repeated. Marcus let out a small laugh, the kind men do when they don't like being told no. All right, Mama. Do you? He hung up like he was done with the conversation, like he hadn't just cracked open something in me that I wasn't sure how to close again. I sat down at my dining table and stared at nothing. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight, and I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I tried to tell myself it was just a misunderstanding. People make mistakes. Families get messy. Maybe Marcus genuinely thought he was helping. But then I remembered the bankwoman's words. The change was confirmed on a verification call. A call. Not a signature in front of me. Not a meeting. A call. And somehow it got confirmed. I got up and walked to my little home office. I opened my laptop and logged into my account, partly because I wanted answers and partly because I needed to prove to myself I still could. The login screen looked normal. The balance looked normal. For a second, I almost felt relief. Then I clicked into the profile details. And my mouth went dry. My mailing address that I've had for decades, was no longer my home. It had been changed to an apartment address I didn't recognize at first. Then I recognized it too well. It was Marcus and Jade's place. My fingertips went cold on the keyboard. I stared at the screen, reading it again and again like it might switch back if I blinked hard enough. A beneficiary change is a theft of the future. An address change is a theft of the present. Because if the mail goes to them, then the information goes to them. The statements, the alerts, the warnings, the paper trail of my life. I sat back in my chair and felt a quiet kind of fear settle into my bones. Not the dramatic kind, not the movie kind. The practical kind. The kind that says, someone is moving pieces around you, and they're doing it while you're still standing there. I closed my laptop slowly. And for the first time since my husband died, I didn't feel like a widow. I felt like a target. I didn't sleep much after I saw my address changed. I did that thing older people do when something feels off, kept getting up to check the locks, kept checking my phone like it might explain itself if I stared hard enough. Around 3 a.m., I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the house. The refrigerator hummed. The heat clicked on. Somewhere outside, a car passed and the tires hissed on wet pavement. Nothing was happening, and that almost made it worse. By morning, I had 2 sticky notes on my kitchen table. One with, bank, 10:30, and another with, change passwords. My handwriting looked the same as it always did. That mattered to me. I needed proof, even if only to myself, that my mind was still my own. I was rinsing a coffee mug when my phone buzzed again. A text from Jade. Good morning, Ms. Denise Erb. I booked you a quick checkup for today at 2:15. Just routine. It'll give you peace of mind. I can drive you. I stared at the message. I hadn't told her I needed a checkup. I hadn't mentioned anything about the bank yet either. Not directly. I'd only spoken to Marcus. I typed back, I didn't ask for an appointment. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I know, she wrote. But Marcus and I worry. Stress isn't good for you. And honestly, lately you've seemed overwhelmed. We just want to make sure you're okay. Overwhelmed. Same word, different mouth. I set my phone down and pressed my palms flat on the counter, like I could steady myself that way. Jade had a talent for making her choices sound like favors. She never said, I'm taking over. She said, let me help. She didn't push with force. She pushed with softness, which is harder to fight without looking like the villain. I could have said no. I should have said no. But I also knew something else. Once someone starts building a story about you, silence becomes part of the story. If I refused the doctor, they could say I was in denial. If I went, they could still twist it, but at least I'd be present for what was said. So I replied, I'll drive myself. She didn't like that. No need, she wrote immediately. It's easier if we go together. I didn't answer. I wasn't going to argue in text like a teenager. I washed my mug slowly, dried it, and put it away. Then I grabbed my purse, my keys, and the folder where I'd started printing anything I could: account summaries, profile pages, anything with dates. At the bank, I sat across from a young man in a neat tie who kept calling me ma'am, like it was a nervous habit. He explained things in circles, the way people do when they're trying to be helpful without admitting the bad part out loud. He confirmed the beneficiary change had been processed. He confirmed the address change. He said they could reverse it, after some internal review, because I was disputing it. What I don't understand, I said, keeping my voice even, is how it was confirmed. I didn't approve anything. He glanced at his screen again. It shows the verification was completed. By who? He hesitated. It was a call placed to the number on file. My heart thumped once, heavy. Which number was on file? He looked up at me, and for a moment I could see he understood what I was asking. He just didn't want to say it. I can print the contact history for you, he said gently. It's possible your number was updated before the verification call. I leaned back in my chair. I felt my face go numb around the edges. So the trick wasn't only that they changed things. The trick was that they changed the path of the confirmations first. When I walked out, I told myself I wouldn't spiral. I told myself to focus on one task at a time. That's how I've survived most things. One load of laundry, one bill, one errand at a time. You don't solve life in one day. You just keep making the next right move. Still, by the time I got home, the idea of going to the doctor felt less like routine, and more like walking into a room where somebody else had already decided what I was going to be called. At 1:40, I heard a car door outside. Through the front window, I saw Jade's sedan at the curb. Of course. Before I could even open my mouth, there was a light knock. 2 taps, polite, like she was a neighbor, not family. When I opened the door, she stood there holding a paper cup of coffee and a little bag from Panera. "Hi, Ms. Denise," she said, smiling like a greeting card. "I brought you something small. I know you don't always eat when you're stressed." I didn't take the bag right away. I said I'd drive myself. "I know," she said, still smiling. "But we can go together. It's better. Plus, parking at that clinic is terrible." Behind her, Marcus climbed out of the passenger seat. He looked calm. Too calm. Like a man who'd already rehearsed his lines. "Mama," he said, and kissed the air near my cheek. "You ready?" I stepped back and let them in, because I didn't want a scene on my porch. Because I didn't want the neighbors to peek through curtains and decide I was the neighborhood problem. People think they don't do that. They do. Inside, Jade set the coffee on my table like she lived here. Marcus glanced around, eyes flicking over the room, the hallway, the staircase. It was subtle, but I noticed. My husband used to do that when a storm was coming. Scan the windows, check the porch, make sure things were steady. Marcus wasn't checking for safety. He was checking what belonged to me. "I don't need both of you," I said, reaching for my coat. "It's a checkup." Marcus held up his hands. "We're not trying to take over. We just want to be there." Jade's voice softened. "It's scary when you're alone, Ms. Denise. Let us support you." Support. That word again, sitting on my kitchen table like it had every right. The drive to the clinic was quiet. Jade talked anyway, filling the silence with safe little topics. Weather, gas prices, a new recipe she wanted to try. Marcus nodded along, but he kept checking his phone. I watched them from the corner of my eye and tried to see what I'd missed over the last few months. Had they always been like this? Had I just been too tired to notice? Or had something changed recently? Something that made them bolder? We arrived early. The clinic smelled like disinfectant and that dry air you get in places with too much heating. The waiting room TV was on, one of those daytime talk shows where everyone smiles too hard. Jade walked up to the front desk before I did. "Hi," she said brightly. "We're here for Denise Carter. 2:15. The receptionist looked at me. "Ms. Carter." "Yes," I said. Jade reached for the clipboard before the receptionist could hand it to me. "I'll help her with the forms," she said, sweet as syrup. "I can fill them out," I said, and I held my hand out. Jade paused for half a second, just half, and then she handed me the clipboard like she was letting me play. "Of course. I just didn't want you to strain your eyes." "My eyes are fine." I sat down and started reading. Name, address, insurance, standard stuff. But as I flipped through, I noticed small things already filled in: emergency contact, alternate phone number, family caregiver. I looked up. Who wrote this? Jade leaned over my shoulder, close enough that I could smell her perfume. "Oh, I did. Just to speed things up." Marcus sat 2 chairs away, legs spread, arms crossed, watching like he was waiting for a verdict. I erased what I could and wrote my own information back in. My hand didn't shake. But inside I felt that same cold drop. If they were willing to pre-fill my medical forms, what else had they been pre-filling? When the nurse called my name, Jade and Marcus both stood up like it was automatic. The nurse hesitated. "Are you both coming in?" Jade smiled. "Yes, we're family." I looked at the nurse. "I'm fine going alone." Jade touched my elbow, light but controlling. "It's okay, Ms. Denise. We're here." I didn't want to argue in a hallway, so I let them follow. In the exam room, the nurse asked questions while typing. When she asked about medications, Jade answered before I did. "She takes blood pressure meds," Jade said. "Sometimes she forgets." "I don't forget," I said. The nurse smiled politely, but her eyes flicked to the screen again, like she was logging a note. That scared me more than anything else. A lie spoken out loud in a medical room doesn't vanish. It becomes ink. When the doctor came in, Dr. Haskins, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, she greeted me warmly. "Ms. Carter," she said. "How have you been feeling?" "Fine," I said. "A little stressed, but fine." She nodded. "That makes sense. I did see a message from your family about some concerns." My stomach tightened. "What concerns?" I asked. Dr. Haskins turned slightly toward her computer. "They mentioned some changes. Confusion. Irritability. Difficulty managing tasks." I sat very still. "I didn't write that. And I didn't say that." Jade spoke quickly. "We didn't mean it like that. She's been through so much. We're worried." Marcus's voice got low, like he was being brave. "Sometimes she'll repeat stories, document. Or she'll get suspicious. Like, she thinks people are against her." I looked straight at him. "I have never said people are against me." He didn't meet my eyes. "See. This is what I mean. She gets defensive." Something in me flared, anger, yes, but also a kind of grief. Because I heard what he was doing. He wasn't describing me. He was building a picture. A picture where any protest I made could be framed as proof. Dr. Haskins held up a hand gently. "Okay. Let's slow down. Ms. Carter, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Nothing scary. Just routine screening." Routine. That word again. She asked me what day it was, where we were, who the president was. Simple things. I answered easily. Then she asked questions that felt less like medical care and more like a test of whether I deserved to keep my life. "Do you ever feel like people are trying to take advantage of you?" I stared at her. For a second, the room felt too bright. Jade's hand rested on the edge of the exam table like she owned it. Marcus leaned back in his chair, relaxed. I could answer honestly. I could say yes. My son changed my retirement beneficiary and my address. But if I said that in this room, with them sitting here, it would sound like paranoia. So I chose my words carefully. "I feel like I need to be more careful," I said. "That's all." Dr. Haskins nodded slowly, like she was filing that away. Then she asked, Have you had any trouble sleeping? Any sudden fears? Any panic? I thought of the porch bell ringing at 1:47 a.m. I thought of the bank call. I thought of Jade pre-filling my forms. I've had stress, I said. But I'm functioning. Dr. Haskins looked at me for a long moment. Then she swiveled her screen slightly and printed something. She placed the paper on the counter, face up. I wasn't trying to snoop. But the heading was bold enough to catch my eye. Family Concern Note, Patient Safety and Cognitive Changes. Under it were bullet points. Phrases that sounded like Jade. Words like overwhelmed, forgetful, agitated, easily influenced by outsiders. Outsiders. My throat went dry. I knew exactly who that meant. It wasn't a medical term. It was a strategy. Dr. Haskins cleared her throat. Ms. Carter, I'm not making any diagnosis today. But I do think it would be helpful to schedule a follow-up. And next time, I'd like you to bring a family member again, just so we can all be on the same page. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at that paper. Because in that moment, I understood something simple and horrifying. They weren't only touching my money. They were laying the groundwork to take my voice. We left the clinic in a strange kind of quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where everyone is holding something back. Jade walked ahead of me through the hallway like she owned the place, her heels clicking in that steady, confident rhythm. Marcus followed with his hands in his pockets, eyes down, like he was playing the part of the tired son who'd done everything he could. I kept thinking about that paper on the counter. Family Concern Note. Those words didn't feel medical. They felt legal. Like somebody was building a file. In the parking lot, Jade opened my car door before I could. I didn't like that. It wasn't rude, exactly. It was practiced. Like she decided this was the new normal. I'm driving, she said softly, like it was already settled. No, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm driving my own car. Marcus exhaled through his nose, the way he did when he was annoyed but trying to look calm. Mama, why are you being difficult? That word, difficult, landed hard. Not because it was new, but because it was familiar. I'd heard men call women difficult my whole life, usually right before they tried to take something from them. I'm not being difficult, I said. I'm being clear. Jade's smile stayed on her face, but it changed around the edges. Okay. Of course. We're just worried. You seemed tense in there. I wanted to tell her, I'm tense because you wrote a lie about me and handed it to my doctor like a casserole. But I didn't. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me snap. So I drove home with both of them behind me in their car, like an escort. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Marcus didn't leave right away. He parked behind me and sat there for a minute. Through my rearview mirror, I watched him talking to Jade. I couldn't hear them, but I could read the shape of the conversation. Her mouth moving fast, his head nodding, that little tilt he does when he's trying to sound reasonable. They came up to my porch together. Can we come in for a second? Marcus asked. Just to talk. I didn't want them in my house. I didn't want them near my papers, my desk, my computer. But refusing again felt like handing them another line for their story. So I stepped aside. Inside, Jade didn't sit on the couch. She sat at my dining table, right where I'd been sitting the day I found out my address had been changed. Marcus stood behind her, like backup. Jade folded her hands. Ms. Denise, we don't want you to feel like we're ganging up on you. I don't need a meeting, I said. I need you to stop making changes in my name. Marcus's jaw tightened. We already talked about that. No, I said. You talked at me. I'm telling you now, you don't get to touch my accounts or my information. Jade's voice stayed calm, but it got firmer. It's not about touching anything. It's about safety. Safety, I repeated. From what? Marcus finally looked at me, and his eyes had that flat, stubborn look I used to see when he was a teenager, and he knew he'd crossed a line. From scams, he said. From people taking advantage. From you making mistakes. I stared at him. You mean from me being an adult? Jade leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice like she was about to share something private. It's not personal. It's just, age is real, Ms. Denise. Things change. And we don't want something to happen, and then we're stuck trying to clean it up. I felt a hard little spark of anger in my chest. So you're cleaning me up early. Marcus lifted his hands. Don't twist it. I almost laughed at that. They were the ones twisting everything, and I was the problem for naming it. I'm tired, I said, standing. You two should go. Jade blinked like she was surprised. We're just trying to talk. I'm done talking, I said. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, like he was making a note in his head. Okay, he said. We'll give you space. He said it like a threat disguised as kindness. They left. Jade hugged me at the door, quick and light, like a person making sure the neighbors see affection. Marcus kissed my cheek again, that same air kiss, and walked away without looking back. When their car finally turned the corner, the house felt quieter than it should have. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing small things on purpose. I watered my plants. I wiped down my counters. I called the bank again and confirmed my appointment for the next day. I changed my online passwords, slowly, carefully, writing the new ones down in a notebook I kept hidden in my kitchen drawer under old takeout menus. That evening, I made myself a simple dinner. Baked chicken, green beans, a little rice. The kind of meal my husband used to call real food. I ate alone at my table with the TV on low, not really watching. Every time a car passed outside, I lifted my head like a dog listening. Around 9, I went upstairs, showered, and put on clean pajamas. I sat on my bed with my reading glasses on, flipping through a paperback I'd already read twice. I read the same paragraph 3 times and didn't absorb a word. At 11:30, I turned off the lamp. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell rang. It wasn't the long press of a delivery person. It was 2 short rings, spaced apart, like someone testing it. My eyes flew open. My heart started pounding so hard it made my chest ache. I lay still for a second, listening. Silence. Then the bell rang again. I sat up and reached for my phone, hands shaking. For a moment I almost dialed 911. But my mind started doing that cruel thing. What if it's nothing? What if it's kids? What if you call the police and it's just nothing, and now you're the old lady who panicked? That's how they get you. Not by breaking your door down. By making you doubt your right to react. I got out of bed and walked to the top of the stairs. The house was dark. The hallway nightlight glowed faintly. Everything looked normal, and somehow that made it feel more wrong. I crept down the stairs slowly. My knees complained, quiet but persistent. I held onto the banister like it could keep me steady. At the bottom, I stood in the living room and stared at the front door. I didn't move. I listened for footsteps, for voices, for the creak of the porch boards. Nothing. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see outside. The porch was empty. My porch light was on, but it flickered softly, like it was struggling to stay awake. The street was quiet. No cars. No people. Just the glow of a distant street lamp and the shadow of my mailbox. I let the curtain fall back into place and stood there, breathing. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from my doorbell camera. Motion detected. I opened the app. The video played. The angle showed my porch, grainy in the dark. For a second I saw nothing. Then a shape moved at the edge of the frame, too fast to make out clearly. A person. A sleeve. Something passed close to the camera, like someone stepped up and then stepped back. The clip ended. I watched it again. And again. It wasn't enough to prove anything. It was just enough to make my skin crawl. I checked my locks twice. Then 3 times. I walked the house like a slow patrol. Kitchen door, back door, garage entry. Everything was locked. Still, when I went back upstairs, I didn't feel safe. I felt watched. Not by a stranger outside, but by the idea that someone could press a button and make my heart race whenever they wanted. I fell asleep sometime after 3. Not real sleep, just that half sleep where your body is tired but your mind keeps one eye open. In the morning, I found my back gate latch loose. It wasn't wide open. It was just not set the way I always set it. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember if I'd touched it the day before. I didn't think I had. Then I noticed the porch light was off, even though I always leave it on at night. I went inside and checked the switch. It was still in the on position. The bulb had burned out. Little things. Easy to explain. Easy to shrug off. But taken together, it felt like a message. You're not in control here. By late morning, I was jumpy. I caught myself flinching when my phone buzzed. I forgot my grocery list on the counter, something I almost never do. Then I got mad at myself for forgetting, because I could already hear Marcus's voice. See? Around noon, Jade texted. You okay? We heard you didn't sleep well. I stared at the screen. We heard. From who? I hadn't told anyone about the doorbell. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. 2 polite taps. I didn't open it right away. I looked through the peephole. Marcus and Jade. Marcus held a grocery bag. Jade held a folder. Of course she did. I opened the door, but I didn't step aside. What are you doing here? Jade's smile was soft and concerned, like she'd been practicing it in the mirror. We wanted to check on you. Marcus said you sounded tired yesterday. I'm fine, I said. Marcus leaned in slightly. Mama, we got worried. Jade said maybe you were stressed and, after Dad, you've been alone. We don't want something to happen. He said something like it was a cloud hanging over my head. Jade lifted the folder a little, like she was showing me a menu. We brought something to make life easier. Just in case. I didn't move. What is it? Nothing scary, she said quickly. Just paperwork. A simple authorization so we can help if there's an emergency. Power of attorney. Medical release. Stuff like that. There it was, spoken out loud like it was normal. Marcus nodded. It's just in case, Mama. If you fall, if you get sick, if you decide I'm confused, I cut in, and my voice came out sharper than I meant. Jade blinked, still smiling, but I saw the flicker. Ms. Denise. Nobody is saying that. We just want to be prepared. Prepared. For what? For my safety. Or for my surrender. I stepped back and let them in because standing on the porch arguing felt like another trap. Inside, Jade laid the folder on my dining table like it belonged there. She flipped it open and pointed to signature lines with a neat fingernail. Right here and here. I leaned over and read the headings slowly. Power of attorney. Authorization to release health information. The language was formal, heavy, full of words that sounded like doors clicking shut. Marcus watched me. Jade watched my pen. I set the pen down. I'm not signing this today, I said. Jade's smile stayed, but it got thinner. Why not? Because I don't sign things when I'm scared, I said. And I am scared. Marcus scoffed softly. Of what? Of us. I looked at him. Of losing myself on paper. He rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. Mama, you're making this bigger than it is. Jade reached out and touched my hand, light as a feather. You're overwhelmed. That's all. Just sign and we'll take care of the rest. Overwhelmed. Again. I pulled my hand back. No. The room went still. For half a second, neither of them spoke. And in that small silence, I heard the real truth. They hadn't expected resistance. They'd expected the doorbell at 1:47 a.m. and the loose latch and the dead porch bulb to do their job. They'd expected fear to loosen my grip. Marcus forced a smile. Okay. Fine. Not today. Jade closed the folder, still calm. We'll talk about it later, when you're feeling better. They left after that, groceries untouched on my table like an offering I hadn't earned. When the door shut behind them, I stood in my hallway and felt my knees go a little weak. I hated that. I hated that my own son could walk into my house with paperwork and make me feel like a trespasser. I spent the next hour moving slowly through my home, checking things the way I had the night before. I kept telling myself to breathe, to stay rational, to not let fear write their story for them. In my little home office, I decided to print out the bank dispute form I'd been emailed. I needed to keep everything in one place. Receipts, dates, paper. I turned on my printer. It whirred. It clicked. It spit out a single sheet before I even hit print. I frowned and picked it up. It wasn't my bank form. It was a page with one thing on it, large, centered, clean like a test run. My signature. Not scribbled by me in a hurry. Not shaky. A crisp, scanned version of it, like someone had practiced copying it onto a blank page. I stood there with that paper in my hand, my throat dry, my heart hammering. Because the night suddenly made sense. The doorbell. The latch. The fear. They weren't just trying to scare me. They were trying to make me sign. And when I didn't, they started practicing without me. I folded that printer page 3 times and slid it into the same folder where I kept my bank papers. I didn't know what to do with it yet. I just knew I couldn't throw it away. It felt like evidence, even if I didn't fully understand what kind of case I was building. That week, I moved through my days like I was walking on a floor that might give out. I still did the normal things, laundry, dishes, a quick run to the grocery store, but everything had a second layer now. Every phone buzz made my shoulders tighten. Every knock at the door made my heart jump. Even the silence felt suspicious, like something was waiting behind it. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not because I didn't need support, but because I didn't want to sound like the exact person Marcus and Jade were trying to describe. Overwhelmed, paranoid, confused. That's the cruel part. Once someone starts planting that label, you start policing your own fear. You start worrying more about how you look than what's happening. Sunday came, and I forced myself to go to church. Church has always been the one place that still felt like mine. Not because it's perfect. Church folks can gossip like anybody else, but because it has rhythm. Familiar faces. Familiar songs. A sense that even if everything else shifts, you can still sit in the same pew and breathe. I wore a simple navy dress and a cardigan. I took my time doing my hair, not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I needed to remind myself, I'm still here. I still show up. The sanctuary smelled like polished wood and old hymn books. The choir warmed up softly. People hugged each other in that gentle, practiced way. When I stepped into the aisle, a few women waved. A couple smiled a little too hard, like they were trying to be careful. I told myself I was imagining it. Then I saw Loretta. Loretta James was 60, maybe a little older if she'd admit it, which she wouldn't. She had a laugh that filled a room and a mouth that didn't know how to lie politely. She wore bright lipstick every Sunday like it was part of her faith. And she'd been my friend long enough to notice when my smile wasn't real. She stood up the moment she saw me. "Look who decided to bless us," she said, loud enough for 3 rows to hear. Then she leaned in and hugged me tight. "Where you been, Dee?" Her arms around me felt like relief I didn't know I needed. I pulled back and tried to keep it light. "Just busy," I said. "You know how it is." Loretta narrowed her eyes. "Busy with what? You ain't got no job to clock into. Don't play with me." I let out a small laugh that came out more tired than funny. "Life. Stuff." Loretta didn't laugh. She took my elbow and guided me toward a quieter corner near the hallway, away from the main crowd. I called you, she said, voice lower now. 3 times last week. I blinked. I didn't get 3 calls. Loretta's face shifted into something sharp. Yes, you did. And every time, that little wife of his answered. My stomach dropped. Jade? I asked, even though I already knew. Loretta nodded. She answered like she lived in your phone. All sweet and airy. Oh, hi, Ms. Loretta. Denise is resting. Denise is tired. Denise doesn't feel up for talking. My throat went dry. She said that. She said it like she was doing me a favor, Loretta said. And when I asked why you couldn't answer your own phone, she said you'd been overstimulated and you needed peace. Overstimulated. Peace. Those weren't words I used. Those were Jade words, soft words with sharp edges. I didn't tell her to answer my phone, I said quietly. Loretta stared at me hard. Dee. What's going on? I didn't want to dump it all in a church hallway. I didn't want to make a scene. But Loretta had that look on her face like she wouldn't let me walk away with a lie. So I told her the smallest version I could. The bank called, I said. Things got changed. And Marcus and Jade have been acting like I can't handle my own business. Loretta's jaw tightened. Changed how? I hesitated. Then I said it. Beneficiary. Address. Loretta inhaled sharply like she'd burned her tongue. They changed your address? I nodded once. Loretta said, oh, hell no, so quietly it sounded like a prayer. The service started, and we went to our seats. I tried to focus. I tried to sing. But my mind kept drifting. The pastor spoke about trust and stewardship and family, and every word felt like it had 2 meanings. I kept thinking about Dr. Haskins saying, bring a family member. I kept thinking about that printed signature page tucked in my folder like a snakeskin. After the benediction, people moved to the fellowship hall for coffee and donuts. That's where the real church happens, honestly. Where you hear who's sick, who's moving, who's getting divorced, whose grandbaby got accepted into college. I poured coffee, and before I could even take a sip, I felt a hand on my back. Jade's hand. Ms. Denise, she chirped. There you are. I was worried you'd be too tired to come. I turned slowly, keeping my face neutral. Marcus stood beside her, wearing his clean Sunday smile. He kissed my cheek like he always did, and I hated the way it looked to other people, like devotion. Hey mama, he said. You doing okay? Loretta appeared on my other side like a guard dog. She's doing fine, Loretta said, pleasant in tone but sharp underneath. Now that she's here to speak for herself. Jade's smile didn't move. Of course. I'm so glad you came, Loretta. We've just been trying to give Ms. Denise a little quiet lately. The doctor said she needs less stress. My stomach clenched. The doctor. That was how they were dressing it up now. Like the clinic visit gave them authority. Loretta tilted her head. Which doctor said she needs quiet? Marcus jumped in fast. Dr. Haskins. She said Mom's been having moments. I stared at him. You mean the note you sent her? His eyes flickered. Just for a second. Then he recovered. Mama, he said, soft and patient like he was talking to a child. See? This is what I mean. You get worked up. I felt heat rise in my face. Not because I was losing control, because I could see exactly what he was doing. He was setting the trap in front of witnesses. If I got angry, he'd say, see? If I stayed calm, he'd say, she's shutting down. Loretta didn't move. What kind of moments? She asked, still calm. Because Denise looks clear as day to me. Jade sighed like Loretta was being unreasonable. It's not about what she looks like. It's about safety. Sometimes older people don't realize they're slipping. We're not trying to be disrespectful. At your age. Safety. Slipping. It was the same song, different verse. Loretta turned her body slightly, placing herself between Jade and me, like she was shielding me from a draft. "Let me ask you something," Loretta said. "Why you answering her phone?" Jade blinked, slow. "Excuse me." Loretta smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. "I called Denise. You answered. Why?" Marcus laughed like it was nothing. "Because Mom asked us to help with stuff." "I did not," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. Jade's eyebrows rose just a touch, like she was surprised I spoke. Loretta nodded once. "That's what I thought." Jade's smile tightened. "We're family. It's normal to support each other." Loretta leaned in a little. "Support is one thing. Speaking for her is another." Marcus's face hardened, just barely. "Loretta, with respect, you don't know what goes on in our family." Loretta's tone stayed sweet, but it sharpened at the end. "And you don't know what it looks like from the outside." Jade reached up and dabbed at the corner of her eye like she'd suddenly gotten emotional. Her voice dropped into that soft, wounded register she used when she wanted people to feel sorry for her. "I don't understand why you're attacking us," she said. "We're doing our best. Marcus is under so much pressure. We're just trying to keep Ms. Denise safe." I watched two women nearby glance over. I watched their faces shift. Confusion, concern, that quick instinct people have to side with whoever looks like they're crying. That's how Jade fought. She didn't throw punches. She performed pain. Loretta saw it too. She didn't raise her voice. She just said, "Nobody attacking you, baby. We asking questions." Marcus stepped closer to me, lowering his voice as if to comfort me, but it felt like a warning. "Mama," he said, "please. Don't let outsiders put ideas in your head." Outsiders. The word snapped something in me. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet clarity. Because he was saying it like Loretta was the problem. Like my friend of 20 years was a stranger with an agenda. Like anyone who supported me was an intruder. I took a slow breath. "Loretta's not an outsider," I said. "She's my friend." Marcus's smile stayed on, but his eyes cooled. "Okay. If you say so." Jade touched my shoulder. "Ms. Denise, you look overwhelmed. Let's go sit down." I stepped away from her hand. "I'm going to the restroom," I said, and I walked off before my face could betray what I felt. In the bathroom mirror, I looked older than I had a week ago. Not because I'd changed overnight, but because fear ages you quietly. It pulls the softness out of your eyes. It makes you hold your breath without realizing it. When I came back out, Loretta was waiting by the hallway like she hadn't moved. She watched me with the kind of concern that doesn't try to own you. It just stays. "We need to talk," she said. "Not here," I whispered. "Fine," she said. "After. At my place or yours." On the drive home, I kept thinking about those women's faces in the fellowship hall, the way their sympathy drifted toward Jade the second she dabbed at her eye. I kept thinking about Marcus's voice, outsiders. Like my world was supposed to shrink down to him and Jade until there was nobody left to contradict their story. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in my car for a full minute without turning the key off. My hands rested on the steering wheel, and I stared at my front door. I didn't feel like I was coming home. I felt like I was returning to a place someone else was trying to claim. Inside, I set my purse down and went straight to my phone. Loretta's words repeated in my head, "If they can make you look unstable, they can make anything sound true." I opened my contacts list, planning to call a couple of women from church, people I trusted, people who'd known me for years. I wanted to hear normal voices. I wanted to rebuild the net. I scrolled. And then I stopped. Because names were missing. Not one or two I could chalk up to my own mistake. Whole chunks. The ladies who always sat behind me in the pew. My neighbor across the street. The woman who coordinated the church meals. People who had been in my phone for years. Just gone. My mouth went dry. I scrolled again, faster this time, like I could shake the names loose if I moved quickly enough. But the spaces stayed empty. I set my phone down on the table and stared at it like it had betrayed me too. Because I finally understood what Loretta had been trying to tell me. It wasn't just my bank account. It wasn't just a doctor note. It wasn't just paperwork. Someone had been cutting my connections one quiet snip at a time. And they were doing it from inside my life. The next 2 days moved slow, but my mind moved fast. I kept trying to explain the missing contacts in a way that didn't make me sound crazy. Maybe my phone updated. Maybe I accidentally deleted people. Maybe I hit sync wrong. But deep down I knew. It was the same feeling I'd had when I saw my address changed. Like I was standing in my own life and watching someone quietly rearrange it while I pretended not to notice. And the more I pretended, the bolder they got. Loretta came by on Tuesday afternoon. She didn't call first. She just showed up with a grocery bag and the kind of look that meant she wasn't leaving until she got answers. "I brought you chicken salad and some of them little crackers you like," she said, stepping inside. "Don't argue with me." I didn't. I let her set the bag on my counter, let her walk through my kitchen like she belonged here, because in a way she did. She'd sat at this table for years. She'd held my hand at my husband's funeral. She'd prayed with me when I thought I'd never stop crying. She looked around my living room, then back at me. "You got that I'm fine face on," she said. "Take it off." I sat down at the table and slid my folder toward her. Bank printouts. The dispute form. A screenshot of my account profile with the address changed. The printed signature page from my printer. Loretta flipped through quietly, her mouth tightening as she read. When she got to the signature page, she stopped. "OD," she whispered. This is bad." "I know," I said. Loretta looked up. "Have you told anyone else?" "No." "Why not?" I swallowed. "Because I don't want them to say I'm losing it." Loretta shook her head slowly. "Baby, they already saying it." That hit me hard because it was true. I'd been trying to protect my pride, my reputation, my calm image. While they were out there building a story about me anyway. Loretta reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her palm was warm. Solid. "Listen," she said. "You not alone. You hear me. You're not gonna handle this by yourself." I wanted to believe that. I did. But fear has a way of making you feel solitary even when someone is sitting right in front of you. After Loretta left, I spent the evening doing what I always do when I can't control the big picture. I controlled the small things. I wrote a list, call the bank again, check my credit report, change the locks if needed, check the doorbell camera settings, make sure my mail was still coming to my house. I went to bed early. I didn't sleep early. At 2:30 a.m. I got up, walked downstairs, and checked the front door again. Everything was locked. The porch light was steady, new bulb. The back gate latch was secure. Still, I sat at my dining table in the dark for a long time, looking at the shadow of my own hands. I kept thinking about the words on that doctor's note, influenced by outsiders. That wasn't about my health. That was about cutting me off from anyone who could stand next to me and say, "No, she's not confused. She's being cornered." Wednesday morning, I finally got myself together enough to go outside and pick up my mail. The air was cold and bright, the kind that makes your lungs feel clean for a second. My driveway had a thin layer of frost that crunched under my shoes. I walked down to the mailbox in my robe and coat, the way I've done 1,000 times. Inside were the usual things, a grocery store flyer, a church newsletter, a credit card offer I didn't ask for. And then I saw it. A thick envelope. Official looking. My name printed in block letters. A return address that made my stomach drop before I even read it. Cuyahoga County Probate Court. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. I stood there by the mailbox, one hand gripping the envelope, the other hand frozen at my side like I'd forgotten what to do with it. I walked back up my driveway slowly, every step heavy. I kept telling myself it could be anything. Jury duty. A mix-up. Some random notice. But my body already knew. My body felt the truth before my mind caught up. Inside, I sat at my table and stared at that envelope for a full minute without opening it. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Even the fridge hum sounded far away. Then I slid my finger under the flap. The paper inside was crisp. Smelled like toner. The kind of paper that doesn't care about your feelings. The first line I saw was, "Petition for appointment of guardian of an adult." I felt my breath leave my body like I'd been hit. Guardian. That word belongs to children. To people who can't care for themselves. To someone who needs a hand held crossing the street. Not to me. I read further, my eyes moving faster than my brain wanted them to. Petitioner. Marcus Carter. Relationship to respondent. Son. Allegation. Respondent is unable to manage her personal and financial affairs due to cognitive decline. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, thinking maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something else. Something less humiliating. Something less terrifying. But they stayed. There were more lines, clinical-sounding phrases that I could hear Marcus repeating in his concerned voice. There it was again, confusion, irritability, paranoia, susceptible to influence. And then, like a knife turned slowly. Respondent has recently demonstrated mistrust toward family and has been influenced by outsiders who do not understand the full scope of her condition. Outsiders. My hands started shaking. Not a little tremble. A full-body tremor that made the paper crackle. I wasn't just being talked about. I was being filed. I read the date of the hearing. Not far off. Too soon. Like they'd been planning longer than I realized. I turned the page and saw attachments, statements, observations. A note about a recent doctor visit. So they'd used Dr. Haskin's appointment exactly the way I feared. They'd turned routine screening into a foundation. My throat tightened until swallowing hurt. I thought about what guardianship would mean. I didn't know all the legal details, but I knew enough to be scared. I'd heard stories, older people having their bank accounts controlled, their homes sold, their choices managed for their own good. It's the kind of thing you don't think can happen to you until you see your name in a court document. And what made it worse, what made me feel truly sick, was realizing that Marcus was using my love for him as his cover. Because who would question a son, just trying to help his mother? My phone rang while I was still staring at the papers. Marcus. Of course. I let it ring twice before I answered, because I needed one breath where I wasn't reacting on instinct. "Mama," he said, voice soft, like he was calling from a hospital room. "You got the mail?" I didn't speak for a second. I could hear Jade in the background, faint but present, like she was standing close enough to listen. "Yes," I said finally. "I got it." He sighed. "Okay. Listen, don't panic." Panic. He was already naming my emotions for me, already shaping them for his story. "I'm not panicking," I said. "I'm reading." "Mama," he said, "we didn't want it to come to this. But you've been acting different." I stared at the words on the page. Cognitive decline. "What exactly is your goal?" I asked, and my voice surprised me. It was quieter than anger. It was something colder. There was a pause. Then Marcus said, "To protect you." "By taking my rights," I said. "It's not taking," he insisted. "It's making sure you don't get hurt. You're alone in that big house. You're stressed. You're making accusations. It's not healthy." He said it like he cared, but underneath I could hear it. The impatience. The entitlement. The way he believed he had the authority to decide what healthy meant for me. I closed my eyes briefly. I pictured Marcus at 10 years old, sitting at this same table doing homework, asking me how to spell words, laughing when he got them wrong. I pictured his high school graduation. The day I cried because I was proud and scared at the same time. Then I opened my eyes and looked at the petition again. Same son. Same name. Different person. You changed my beneficiary, I said. You changed my address. You tried to get me to sign power of attorney. And now you filed for guardianship. He exhaled, irritated. See. This is what I mean. You think everything is some kind of plot. It is a plot, I said, and my voice cracked on the last word, not from weakness, just from the shock of saying it out loud. Jade's voice came through, soft and wounded. Ms. Denise, please. This doesn't have to be ugly. Ugly. Like truth was the problem. I swallowed. You already made it ugly when you decided I couldn't speak for myself. Marcus's tone hardened. Mama, don't do this. Don't fight it. You're going to embarrass yourself. That's what it was about. Not my safety. Not my health. Control. Image. Keeping me in the position of the sweet old mom, who signs what she's told and smiles for church. I'm not embarrassed, I said. I'm terrified. He went quiet. And in that silence, I could almost hear him thinking. Careful. Don't say the wrong thing. Keep the mask on. Mama, he said again softer, we're doing this out of love. I looked at the petition. Love doesn't come in court envelopes. I have to go, I said, and I hung up. After that, I just sat there. The envelope, the papers, my hands resting on the table like I didn't know what to do with them. I thought about calling the pastor. I thought about calling my sister. I thought about calling the bank again. I thought about calling the police, even though I knew this wasn't the kind of thing police handle. Then my eyes landed on the line again. Influenced by outsiders. And I realized, Marcus wasn't just trying to win guardianship. He was trying to pre-kill my credibility. He was trying to make sure that if I asked for help, people would hesitate. They'd think, maybe she's confused. My phone buzzed with a new text from Jade. We can all sit down and talk, Ms. Denise. Please don't let Loretta and those church women fill your head. There it was. Clear as day. Not concern. Not love. A warning. I picked up my phone and called Loretta before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the first ring. D. My voice shook. Loretta, he filed for guardianship. There was a beat of silence. Then Loretta's voice dropped into something deep and firm. Oh baby, she said. No. He did not. I stared at the court papers again, feeling my fear turn into something else, something steadier, something that could hold shape. He did, I whispered. Loretta didn't waste time. Listen to me. Put some clothes on. We're not sitting in that house shaking. We're going to get you help. What kind of help? I asked, and my throat felt tight. The kind that comes with receipts, Loretta said. The kind that comes with a lawyer. I closed my eyes. Because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a target. I felt like someone had finally handed me a direction. And the hearing date stared back at me from the page like a countdown. Loretta pulled up in front of my house like she was picking me up for an appointment I couldn't miss. Because I couldn't. I watched her car through the front window before I even put my coat on. The sky was the dull gray Cleveland always wears in winter, the kind that makes noon feel like late afternoon. My porch steps still had a strip of frost on them. I stood there in my socks for a moment, holding my phone, staring at the court papers on my dining table like they might start moving on their own. I kept thinking, this is my son. And right behind that thought came another, colder one. And he filed me like paperwork. The doorbell rang, normal this time, no 1:47 a.m. tricks. Loretta didn't tap politely. She rang like she meant it. When I opened the door, she looked me up and down. You dressed? She asked. I nodded. Jeans, sweater, coat. My hair pulled back. Nothing fancy. I didn't have the energy for fancy. Loretta stepped inside, glanced at the envelope on my table, and let out a sound like a growl. MMMM. I grabbed my folder, bank printouts, the doctor note I'd seen, the signature page from my printer, screenshots I'd taken on my phone. It felt strange to carry my life around in a manila folder like I was going to school. Loretta watched me tuck it under my arm. Good, she said. Bring everything. Today we're not doing feelings. We're doing facts. That line got me through the door. In her car, the heater blasted hot air that smelled faintly like peppermint from one of those little hanging fresheners. Loretta drove with both hands on the wheel like we were heading into a storm. Where are we going? I asked, even though I already knew the direction she meant. Legal aid, she said. Downtown. My stomach fluttered, uneasy. A lawyer costs money. Loretta snorted. You got a bigger problem than money. Besides, them folks help seniors all the time. You not the first woman somebody tried to talk out of her own life. I stared out the window as we drove. Bare trees. Slush piled in the gutters. People walking fast with their heads down. Life continuing like nothing was wrong. I thought about Marcus as a little boy, dragging a backpack bigger than his shoulders. I thought about the way he used to run to me after school like I was safety itself. Now he'd put safety in a court envelope like a weapon. Loretta reached over and squeezed my forearm once. Quick, firm. You with me? She asked. I'm with you, I said. And I meant it. The legal aid office was in a plain building with fluorescent lights and a lobby that smelled like winter coats drying. There was a small line at the front desk, people holding folders like mine, looking tired in that quiet, resigned way. We signed in. They gave us a clipboard. Loretta tried to grab it, but I took it first. I can fill out my own forms, I said, and I heard myself sound sharper than usual. Loretta smiled, approving. That's right. We waited in plastic chairs that were bolted to the floor. I watched the clock on the wall, the second hand ticking too loudly. Every few minutes, someone's name was called. Some people went back alone. Some brought family. I wondered how many of them were here because family had turned into something else. After about 40 minutes, a door opened and a woman stepped out holding a file. Ms. Denise Carter? I stood up. Loretta stood too, right beside me. The woman was maybe in her early 40s, medium height, hair pulled back, no nonsense in the way she carried herself. She wore a simple blazer and flats, like someone who had places to be all day. Her eyes were calm and direct. I'm Maya Patel, she said, offering her hand. I'm one of the attorneys here. Come on back. Her office was small but neat. A desk, 2 chairs, a bookshelf lined with binders. A little lamp gave the room a warmer light than the hallway. On the wall was a print that said something like "Know your rights." Simple, straightforward. Maya sat down and looked at me, not at Loretta, not at my folder. At me. Tell me what's happening, she said. Start from the first thing that made you uncomfortable. I took a breath. My voice felt strange in my mouth, like I wasn't used to hearing myself say these things out loud. The bank called, I began. They said my retirement beneficiary was changed. And then I found my address was changed too, mailing address, sent to my son's apartment. Maya didn't react with shock or drama. She just nodded, pen in hand. And your son is the petitioner for guardianship? She asked. Yes, I said. He says I'm confused. Maya glanced at Loretta. And you're her friend? 20 years, Loretta said. And she ain't confused. Maya nodded once, then turned back to me. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to build a timeline. Dates matter. Who said what matters? And we're going to collect documentation to support your version of events. That word, your version, should have felt weak. But it didn't. It felt respectful. Like she was acknowledging that my reality still counted. I slid my folder across the desk. Maya opened it slowly, like she'd learned not to rush people when they're scared. She flipped through my printouts, bank profile screenshots, the petition copy, the signature page. When she reached the signature page, her eyes narrowed slightly. "Did you print this?" she asked. "No," I said. "It came out of my printer by itself when I turned it on. Like someone had cued it." Maya didn't say, "That's impossible." She didn't laugh. She just made a note. "Do your son and daughter-in-law have access to your house? Your Wi-Fi? Your devices?" she asked. I hesitated. "They've been here. Not living here. But they've been here a lot. Jade grabs my phone sometimes. Marcus has used my laptop once or twice." Loretta made a sound under her breath. Hum. Maya looked up at me again. "Ms. Carter, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer plainly. Not to sound polite. Not to sound reasonable. Plainly. Did you authorize any changes to your accounts?" "No." "Did you ask them to contact your doctor on your behalf?" "No." "Did you ask them to fill out medical forms for you?" "No." Maya nodded. "Good. That clarity matters." She leaned back slightly. "Now we need to gather receipts. I'm going to give you a list of what to request. Not because you're trying to punish them. Because you need to protect yourself from being labeled as unreliable." That hit deep. Unreliable. That was the word behind everything. Maya started with the bank. "We need the account change history," she said. "Not just current information. The log that shows when beneficiary was changed, when mailing address was changed, and what contact method was used for verification. If there was a phone number update prior to verification, that matters too." I nodded, absorbing. "Then the doctor. We need the message or note that was sent to your clinic," Maya continued. "Date and time. If it came from a patient portal message, we can request a copy. If it came through email or fax, we request the records." Loretta leaned forward. "Can they even give that?" Maya looked at her gently. "They can give it to Ms. Carter. It's her medical record." I felt a small relief at that. Like a door cracked open. Maya took out a blank sheet of paper and drew a simple timeline line down the center. "Let's mark key events," she said. "Bank call date." I told her. She wrote it down. "Clinic appointment date?" she asked. I told her. She wrote it down. "Nighttime doorbell incident?" she asked. I blinked. I didn't mention that yet." Maya's eyes stayed steady. "Mention it." So I did. I described the bell ringing at 1:47 a.m., the porch being empty, the motion alert, the loose gate latch the next morning. I didn't claim I knew who did it. I just said what happened. Maya wrote it down without judgment. "That matters," she said quietly. "Not as proof of who did what, yet, but as context for why you felt pressured and why you were vulnerable when they pushed paperwork." I swallowed. My throat felt tight. Loretta reached over and touched my elbow lightly, like she was reminding me I wasn't floating alone. Maya slid the timeline paper toward me. "This is your anchor," she said. "When you get stressed, you come back to dates. You come back to facts. Facts don't shake like fear does." I stared at the paper. It looked simple. But it felt like structure, like something solid under my feet. Before we left, Maya set a plan. "Step 1, she said. "We request those records. Today if possible. Tomorrow at the latest. Step 2, we prepare your response to the guardianship petition. Step 3, we gather a witness statement from someone who has consistent contact with you, someone who can speak to your functioning." Loretta lifted her chin. "That's me." Maya nodded. "Good." When we stepped back out into the hallway, I realized my shoulders had dropped. I hadn't noticed how tightly I'd been holding myself for weeks, like if I relaxed, I'd fall apart. Loretta drove us straight to the bank. This time, I didn't feel like a scared woman walking into a lobby. I felt like someone with a folder, a plan, and a clock. At the bank, I asked for the change history. The manager, a woman with short hair and a careful smile, took me into a small office. She listened as I explained, then printed several pages. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She didn't say, "Maybe you forgot." She just said, "These are the updates on record." And there it was in black ink, timestamps, account changes, and the detail that made my stomach twist. A contact number on file had been updated shortly before the verification call. I stared at the line until the numbers blurred. "I didn't change that," I whispered. Loretta squeezed my shoulder. "I know." We left with copies and walked back out into the cold air. My breath came out in little clouds. I felt strangely calm, like fear was shifting into something more usable. Next stop was the clinic's patient portal. I'm not great with technology, but I can follow instructions when it matters. In the parking lot, sitting in Loretta's warm car, I logged in and found the message history. There it was, a note filed as family concern, sent before my appointment. I read it slowly. It sounded like Jade. The language was polished, full of soft terms, overwhelmed, forgetful, agitated, easily influenced. And the part that made my face go hot again. Influenced by outsiders. Loretta leaned over to read. Her mouth tightened. "Lord. We saved it. Screenshots. Dates." Then we went back to my house to check my doorbell camera properly, not the way I'd done at 2 a.m. with shaking hands. I pulled up the clip from the night of the doorbell. We watched it again, frame by frame. Still grainy. Still not enough to name a face with certainty. But it showed something else I hadn't noticed before. The motion wasn't random. It was close to the camera, like someone stepped up to it and then stepped back deliberately, staying out of view. "Like they knew where the blind spot was," Loretta muttered. I didn't answer. Because if I said what I was thinking out loud, it would feel heavier. We sat in my kitchen afterward with the folder spread out like a crime board. Bank logs, clinic note, court petition, signature printout, doorbell clip. My kitchen looked the same as it always had. Fridge magnets, dish towel hanging on the oven handle, but it felt different. Like the room had learned a truth and couldn't unlearn it. Loretta leaned back in her chair and sighed. This ain't care. This is control." I nodded slowly, my eyes on the papers. I know. The thing that scared me most wasn't even the money anymore. It was how coordinated it all looked once it was laid out in order. First the account. Then the address. Then the doctor note. Then the nighttime fear. Then the POA push. Then the court petition. Not random. Not messy. Designed. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Marcus. "We need to talk. This is going too far." I stared at it, then set my phone face down without replying. Loretta watched me. "What's he say?" "He says it's going too far," I said quietly. Loretta gave a humorless laugh. Funny how it's only too far when you start collecting paper. That evening, Maya called to check in. Her voice was calm, steady. "Did you get the records?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Bank logs. Clinic note." "Good," she said. "Ms. Carter, I'm going to say something plainly, and I want you to hear it without shame." I held my breath. "They didn't just prepare paperwork," Maya said. "They prepared a story." I stared at my kitchen window, watching the last light fade into that gray winter sky. And all I could think was, if they prepared a story about me, I needed to show up with the truth. The week before the hearing felt like living with a clock you couldn't turn off. Every day had the same shape. Wake up, make coffee, stare at my folder like it was a second job, then force myself to do normal things so I wouldn't fall apart. I vacuumed my living room. I paid the electric bill. I went to the grocery store and argued with myself in the cereal aisle about whether my hands were shaking because I needed to eat or because I was scared. Loretta called me every morning. Up? She'd ask. Yes, I'd say. Good. You breathed today. I'd laugh a little, even when I didn't feel like laughing. Yes, ma'am. Maya emailed me a draft response to the petition. It was strange seeing my life turned into clean legal language. Respondent denies allegations. Respondent maintains full capacity. The words were dry, but the meaning was loud. I am still me. The night before the hearing, I laid out my clothes like I was going to a funeral. Navy slacks. A simple blouse. My most comfortable shoes that still looked respectable. I didn't want to look flashy, and I didn't want to look frail. I wanted to look like what I was, a woman who had been paying her own bills for decades. I slept maybe 3 hours. In the morning, Loretta picked me up at 7:45 even though the hearing wasn't until 9:30. Why we leaving so early? I asked as I climbed into her car. Because I don't rush when somebody trying to steal your life, she said, and drove off like she meant it. Downtown was cold and gray, the wind sharp between buildings. The courthouse sat heavy and quiet, a big block of stone that didn't care who walked in or out. Inside, we went through security. My purse went in a bin. I stepped through the metal detector and heard it beep because of my belt. The guard waved his wand around me like I was a suspect. I kept thinking, I'm the one being accused, and I'm the one getting scanned. We found the courtroom. Maya was already there, sitting on a bench with a slim laptop bag at her feet. She stood when she saw me. Ms. Carter, she said, calm as always. How are you feeling? I'm here, I said, which was the most honest answer I had. Maya nodded like that was enough. That's the goal. You show up. You stay steady. You let the documentation speak. Loretta sat on my other side, her purse clutched in her lap like a weapon. She leaned close and whispered, if he tries to hug you, I'll bite him. I almost smiled. Almost. Then I saw Marcus and Jade at the far end of the hallway. They looked prepared. Marcus wore a charcoal suit I'd never seen before, hair trimmed, beard lined up. He held a folder like he was walking into a business meeting. Jade wore a light blouse and a long cardigan, soft colors, gentle colors. Her makeup was natural, her eyes slightly shiny like she'd been crying just enough to look worried but not enough to ruin her mascara. They didn't walk toward me right away. They stood there a moment, scanning the scene. And then Marcus spotted Maya. His posture shifted. He wasn't surprised I had support. He was annoyed I had the right kind of support. Not church gossip. Not family drama. A lawyer. He came over with Jade half a step behind him, like a shadow. Mama, he said, voice warm, and leaned in to hug me. I stayed seated. He froze for half a second, then straightened, smile still on but tighter. You okay? He asked, looking at my face the way someone checks a thermometer. I'm fine, I said. Jade touched her hand to her chest, soft and pained. Ms. Denise. I hate that it came to this. Loretta made a small sound, like a cough that meant liar. Maya stood smoothly. Hello, she said, offering her hand to Marcus. I'm Maya Patel. I represent Ms. Carter. Marcus's eyes flicked to her hand. Then he shook it. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I didn't know she had representation, he said. Maya's expression didn't change. She does. Jade's voice went sweet. We were hoping to do this as a family. You know, without lawyers making it aggressive. Maya nodded once. Guardianship petitions are legal actions. It's appropriate for Ms. Carter to have counsel. Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was being reasonable. Maya, with respect, she's not thinking clearly. That's why we're here. I felt my stomach tighten. Even now, even in this hallway, he was trying to talk around me. Maya didn't argue. She simply said, you'll have the opportunity to present your claims in court. A bailiff opened the courtroom door and called names. Our case was on the docket for the morning. We went inside. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not the big dramatic room from TV. Just a judge's bench, a few tables, a handful of rows. The air smelled like paper and old carpet. The lights were bright and unforgiving. Maya guided me to the respondents' table. Loretta sat behind me in the first row, close enough that I could feel her presence like a steady hand at my back. Marcus and Jade sat at the other table. Marcus adjusted his tie. Jade held tissues in her lap. The judge entered, and everyone stood. He looked tired in the way people do when they've seen too many versions of the same story. When we sat back down, he glanced at the documents in front of him. "This is a petition for guardianship," he said, reading, "filed by Marcus Carter regarding Denise Carter." He looked up at Marcus. "Mr. Carter, you're the petitioner." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said. His voice was practiced, calm, concerned. The judge turned his gaze to me briefly. "Ms. Carter, you're the respondent. You are represented today." "Yes," I said. Maya spoke next, measured and clear. "Your Honor, we oppose the petition. Ms. Carter is fully capable of managing her personal and financial affairs. We will present documentation showing unauthorized changes to her banking information initiated without her consent, as well as preemptive communications sent to her medical provider characterizing her as cognitively impaired. We will also present witness testimony regarding efforts to isolate Ms. Carter from her support network." Jade's face stayed soft, but I saw her jaw tighten. The judge nodded and looked back at Marcus. "Mr. Carter, tell me why you believe guardianship is necessary." Marcus took a breath, and then he performed. He described me as forgetful. He said I repeated stories. He said I got agitated. He said I accused them of stealing. He said he worried I'd be scammed, that I'd leave the stove on, that I'd fall in the shower. He said everything in a tone that sounded like love, but the words were a net. Jade dabbed her eyes once and let a tear fall. Not a messy sob. A controlled tear. "We love her," Jade said quietly when the judge asked if she wanted to add anything. "But she's been under so much stress. And when she gets stressed, she doesn't trust anyone. She even thinks her friends are turning her against us." There it was again. Outsiders. Influence. The judge listened without expression. Then he looked at Maya. "Ms. Patel." Maya stood and opened her folder. "Your Honor, I'd like to begin with the bank documentation." She handed copies to the clerk, then to the judge. She walked him through the timeline, the beneficiary update, the mailing address change, the contact number change occurring shortly before a verification call. The judge's eyes narrowed as he read. Maya didn't accuse in an emotional way. She just let the facts exist. "These changes," Maya said, "were not authorized by Ms. Carter. She disputed them and requested records. The bank logs show updates occurred in close sequence. Ms. Carter's number was altered before a verification call. That is consistent with an attempt to redirect confirmation away from Ms. Carter." Marcus shifted in his seat. The judge looked at Marcus. "Mr. Carter, did you update her contact number?" Marcus's smile flickered. "Your Honor, we may have helped her update information. She's not great with technology." The judge didn't respond to the excuse. He simply asked, "Did you have her permission?" Marcus hesitated. "We were trying to help." That wasn't an answer. Maya moved on to the clinic record. "Your Honor," she said, "this is the family concern note in Ms. Carter's medical record. It was submitted prior to the appointment arranged by the petitioner and his spouse." She didn't read it word for word. She pointed out phrases, confused, agitated, influenced by outsiders, and noted the timestamp. Jade stared straight ahead like she couldn't hear. The judge looked at the timestamp, then looked at me. "Ms. Carter, did you ask them to send this?" "No, Your Honor," I said. The judge nodded slightly, then turned to Loretta. "Ma'am, you're the witness." Loretta stood. She didn't look scared. She looked angry, but controlled. She testified plainly. She'd called me and Jade answered. Jade said I was resting. Jade kept speaking for me. Loretta described how I'd started missing church events and how people were told I was overstimulated. She said I was always independent and sharp, and that I seemed distressed, not confused. Then the judge asked me to speak. My mouth went dry. For a second, I thought my voice would crack. I could feel all those weeks of fear pressing against my ribs like a hand. Maya turned slightly toward me and whispered, "Slow, simple. Facts." I stood. I didn't give a speech. I didn't cry. I didn't insult anyone. I looked at the judge and said what I knew. "I pay my bills," I began. "I drive myself. I live alone and I manage my home. I did not authorize changes to my retirement account. I did not authorize changes to my mailing address. I did not authorize my contact number to be changed. And I did not ask anyone to tell my doctor that I'm confused." I paused, swallowed, and continued. "I have been stressed," I said. "Because when I said no, I was treated like I didn't have the right to say no. I'm not asking the court to punish my son. I'm asking the court not to take my voice away because someone decided help means control." The courtroom was quiet. Not dramatic quiet. Just attentive. The judge leaned forward slightly. He looked at Marcus again. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I have a few questions." Marcus nodded quickly. "Of course, Your Honor." The judge's questions were ordinary, almost simple. "How often do you see your mother in person?" Marcus answered. "What is her Sunday routine? What time does she usually attend service?" Marcus hesitated, then guessed. The judge asked, "Who is her closest friend at church?" Marcus glanced sideways, just a quick flick, toward Jade, like he was searching for the right answer. "Loretta," he said finally. The judge nodded, then asked, "What is your mother's late husband's name?" I felt my chest tighten. Marcus blinked. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked down like he was thinking. Jade's fingers clenched around her tissues. Marcus said, and he laughed lightly, like it was normal to forget. "You know, it's been a while." The judge's face didn't change, but something shifted in the room. A subtle thing. A crack in the performance. Because if you're truly caring for someone, you know their story. You know the names that made them. The judge looked down at his papers again, then back up. "I am not prepared to grant guardianship based on what I've reviewed today," he said, voice firm. "The petition is denied." My knees almost buckled. I held myself still. Marcus's head snapped up. "Your Honor." The judge held up a hand. "No. Ms. Carter has demonstrated coherence and capability today. The documentation raises serious concerns about unauthorized financial changes and about the use of medical messaging to support this petition." Jade's face went pale. Her tears stopped. The judge's gaze turned sharp. "If your mother wishes to designate assistance, she may do so on her own terms. Guardianship is not a tool for convenience or control." Then he glanced at me. "Ms. Carter, you may leave." We stood. Maya gathered her folder. Loretta exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a month. As we walked out into the hallway, my legs felt strange, like I was learning how to carry my own weight again. Marcus followed us out quickly. "Mama," he hissed, and the warmth was gone now. The mask slipped. I turned. Maya stepped slightly between us, subtle but clear. Marcus's eyes were hard. "You just made yourself an enemy," he said under his breath. For a second, the old part of me wanted to apologize. The mother part that always tried to smooth things over. The part that hated conflict. But I didn't apologize. I looked at him, and my voice came out quiet and steady. "No," I said. "You just named what you already were." And I walked away with my lawyer on one side and my friend on the other, feeling the air in my lungs like it belonged to me again. When we stepped out of the courthouse, the cold hit my face like a slap. It should have felt like relief right away. It should have felt like victory. But what I felt first was something messier. My knees weak, my mouth dry, my heart still racing like I hadn't escaped anything yet. Because even though the judge said denied, I knew Marcus didn't come this far just to shrug and go home. People who try to take your life in small pieces don't stop because you caught their hand once. They just change tactics. Maya walked with us to the front steps. She didn't talk much at first. She let me breathe. Loretta opened her car door and waited, eyes scanning the sidewalk like she expected Marcus to appear from behind a pillar. When I sat down, my hands were shaking so badly I had to press them between my thighs. Loretta buckled her seatbelt and said, "Okay. We got one win. Don't you go relaxing on me now." I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, but nothing came out clean. Maya leaned down toward the open window. "Ms. Carter," she said, calm and direct, "the petition is denied. That's important. But you're right to feel unsettled. That filing was an escalation. So our response needs to be an escalation too, just in the direction of protection." I nodded slowly. My throat felt tight. What do I do now? Maya didn't sugarcoat it. You lock down your legal and financial decision-making so it can't be helped behind your back again. And you set boundaries that are enforceable, not just emotional. I stared at the dashboard. Enforceable. That word was strange in a family context. But this wasn't just family anymore. Maya continued, "I'm going to outline the steps, and then we'll take them one at a time. You do not have to do everything today. But you do have to start." Loretta reached over and turned the heat up. "She'll start," she said. I didn't answer out loud, but in my head I thought, I already started the day I said no. At home, I didn't go inside right away. I stood on my porch and looked at my front door like it was something I was seeing for the first time. This door had kept weather out. It had kept noise out. It had held my home steady through decades. But it hadn't kept entitlement out. It hadn't kept manipulation out. It hadn't kept my own son from walking in and speaking over me like I was a guest. Loretta put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "I'm going to be," I said. "But I'm not going to pretend anymore." That afternoon, Maya called and walked me through the first steps, slow and practical. She didn't overwhelm me with options. She gave me a sequence. "First," she said, "your banking access needs stronger safeguards. Alerts, in-person verification for changes, removing any alternate phone numbers that aren't yours, and making sure statements are not being redirected." I sat at my kitchen table with my notebook open, writing things down in block letters. Not because I couldn't remember, but because writing made it real. "Second," Maya said, "you need to update your healthcare authorizations. Not with your son or daughter-in-law as default, unless you choose that. You can designate a trusted friend." I glanced at Loretta across the table. She raised an eyebrow like, "Go ahead. Say it." "Third," Maya continued, "estate planning. I'm not talking about anything dramatic. I'm talking about a structure that keeps your decisions in your hands unless you truly, medically cannot make them." "What kind of structure?" I asked. "A revocable living trust," Maya said simply. "It's a way to hold assets under a plan you control, and it can reduce the risk of someone trying to update things informally. We'll connect you to a partner clinic that helps with this for seniors. And we'll keep it straightforward." I swallowed. "So I have to do paperwork to protect myself from paperwork." Maya gave a small, sympathetic sound. "That's one way to put it. But yes. The point is, you choose the rules before someone else tries to." After I hung up, I sat there for a while, listening to the quiet of my kitchen. The fridge hummed. The heater clicked on. The same normal sounds. The difference was me. Loretta broke the silence first. "Locks," she said. I looked at her. "What?" "Change them," she said. Today if you can. Tomorrow if you can't. I hesitated. They don't have a key. Loretta gave me a look like I'd said something naive on purpose. Baby, after what you showed me, you really want to assume you know what they got? I didn't. So we changed the locks. A local locksmith came the next day. A middle-aged man with tired eyes and a tool bag, moving through my front door like it was just another job. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need my story. He just replaced what needed replacing, tested the keys, and handed me a small ring with fresh metal that felt strangely heavy. When the lock clicked into place, I felt something in my chest loosen. Not all the way, but enough. That same day, I went to the bank in person. I sat with a manager and asked, calmly, for the same things Maya had listed. Alerts. Restrictions. Notes on my account that changes required my in-person confirmation. I didn't apologize for being difficult. I didn't explain my family drama. I simply said, I need my account secured. The manager nodded like she understood more than she was allowed to say. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. Marcus. I watched it ring and didn't answer. He texted instead. So now you're ignoring me? After court. I stared at the message until the letters blurred a little. The old part of me wanted to reply. Wanted to smooth it over. Wanted to say, let's talk like adults. But the adult version of this situation was already on record in probate court. The adult version had already played out. I put my phone down. That night I slept with my phone on my nightstand, volume on, and a small lamp left on in the hallway. I hated that I needed that. But I also knew pretending I wasn't scared hadn't protected me. Practical steps did. 2 days later, Jade showed up. I was in my living room folding laundry when the doorbell rang. Normal daytime ring. No tricks. Just a knock that said, I'm here and I expect to be let in. I looked through the peephole. Jade stood there alone. Cardigan. Soft face. Hands folded like she was going to ask forgiveness. I opened the door but I didn't step aside. Ms. Denise, she said quietly. Can we talk? What do you need? I asked. Her eyes flicked past me, like she was checking the hallway, the living room, the space she used to move through freely. I want to clear the air, she said. This has gotten so out of hand. Marcus is devastated. I didn't respond. I waited. Jade took a breath, and her voice dipped into that gentle tone that sounded caring to strangers. You embarrassed him, she said softly. In front of a judge. In front of strangers. There it was. Not I'm sorry we scared you. Not I'm sorry we changed your information. Not I'm sorry we tried to take your rights. Just, you embarrassed him. I didn't embarrass him, I said. He embarrassed himself when he filed that petition. Jade's face tightened. The sweetness slipped just a little. We did it because you were being difficult, she said, still calm, but sharper now. You were accusing us. You were letting Loretta fill your head. We were trying to protect you. Protect you. The same word, again. I shook my head once. Love doesn't come with paperwork that takes someone's voice. Jade's eyes flashed, quick. So what now? You're cutting off your own son. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let my voice shake. I'm not cutting him off, I said. I'm cutting off his access to my life. Jade's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but then she caught herself, like she remembered she was on my porch, in front of my neighbors in daylight. She nodded slowly. Fine, she said. I'll tell him. She turned and walked away without looking back. Her shoulders were stiff. The performance was over. That same evening, Marcus came. I heard his car before I saw it, the engine too loud, the tires hitting the curb like he didn't care. He walked up my steps fast and rang the bell twice. Then he knocked. Hard. Mom, he called through the door. Not Mama. Mom. Like he was trying to sound official. I didn't open it right away. I stood in my hallway and let myself breathe. Then I opened the door a few inches. Chain on. Marcus stared at the chain like it offended him. "You serious?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He laughed once, sharp. "So now you're acting like I'm some stranger." "You treated me like a stranger," I said. "You treated me like an account." His face reddened. "I was trying to help you." "You changed my beneficiary," I said. "You changed my address. You tried to get me to sign power of attorney when I was scared. And when I didn't, you tried to take guardianship." Marcus's jaw flexed. He looked past me again, scanning my home. Old habit. Taking inventory. "I'm your son," he said, voice rising. "What's wrong with you?" I felt something settle in me then. Not rage. Not hatred. Just a clean line. "You want to know what's wrong?" I said quietly. I finally stopped letting "I'm your son" be a permission slip. He stared at me. For a second, he looked younger, confused, angry, like a child caught doing something he didn't think he'd be punished for. "You don't get it," he snapped. "You're alone. You need us." I held his gaze. "I'm alone because you decided love meant control." He shook his head, frustrated. "So what? You're just gonna give everything to strangers now? To church people? To that lawyer?" "No," I said. "I'm giving it to myself. While I'm still alive." His mouth opened, then closed. He looked like he wanted to say something cruel, but he was careful. He'd learned something from court. Words can be used against you. Finally he said, low and bitter, "You'll regret this." Maybe I would regret the son I thought I had. But I wasn't going to regret keeping my own name. "I regret waiting this long," I said. Marcus stood there another second, breathing hard, then stepped back off the porch. He didn't slam anything. He didn't throw a final insult. He just walked away like a man who realized the door was truly locked this time. When his car disappeared down the street, my legs went weak. I leaned against the wall inside my hallway and closed my eyes. I let myself shake for a minute. Not because I'd lost the argument. Because I'd lost the illusion. Loretta came by later with 2 cups of tea and no questions. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just sat at my kitchen table with me while the steam rose between us. I looked at the tea, then at my hands, then at the quiet house. "I used to think being a good mother meant never drawing a line," I said softly. Loretta didn't interrupt. "I thought if I kept loving hard enough, it would fix things," I continued. "But love without limits. It taught him he could take and still call it family." Loretta reached across and tapped my knuckles gently. "You drew the line now." I nodded. My eyes burned a little, but I didn't wipe them fast. I didn't hide them. Because this wasn't shame. This was grief leaving my body. Later that night, when I turned out the lights, I stood for a moment by the mantel and looked at my husband's photo. "I kept it," I whispered. "I kept us." And for the first time in a long time, the quiet in my house didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like ownership. Like breath. Like peace that didn't require permission. I didn't win a war. I just stopped surrendering.